everyone, it's Lisa. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be making 37 cards with Simple Stories Sweet Talk collection. And before we get started on this video, go ahead and click that subscribe button and turn on your bell notifications so that you'll receive notifications every time I release a new video. So this collection by Simple Stories is called the Sweet Talk collection, and it's a brand new collection, and it's just in time for Valentine's Day. Although it doesn't necessarily need to be used for Valentine's Day, you can use this collection when you just want to make cards for love messages, anniversary messages, even friendship messages. So I picked up the 6x8 paper pad, and you see that here, and I'm just flipping through these pages and you can see the pretty pinks and teals and reds that are in these collection. This paper pad also has these cut-aparts, but I did not use these cut-aparts in my cards. I just wanted to use the pattern paper on the opposite side of those pages. I also picked up the puffy stickers, so you could see those here, and then I also picked up the journal bits, and these are all of the journal bits. There's 39 pieces all together, and there's some different sentiments there that you can use on your cards. In addition, I picked up the bits and pieces, and there's 45 pieces. Again, several different ephemera pieces with sentiments that can be used on your cards. And I will provide links to all of these products down in the description box in case you're interested in purchasing them as well. For my first card, I am bringing in some dotted oval dies from the Stamps of Life to do some layering. That Love You sentiment piece will fit perfectly on top of an oval, so I decided to go with that shape. And I am bringing in some solid color cardstock from my stash. It's just stuff that I had laying around. I really couldn't even tell you what the brand was. I tried to find some matching cardstock in this same collection, but I didn't see any online. So that's why I just brought some in from my stash. Now, all the measurements for all of these card layers will be listed on my blog, and there will be a link to my blog post down in the description box of this YouTube video. So if you're interested in replicating any of these cards, go to my blog and all the measurements will be written there for you. So I do bring in some of the ephemera pieces, and I put just a small layer of cardstock on the part of the ephemera so that it lays flat on that card, because laying it on the oval is raised up by a few layers of cardstock, and I wanted to make sure it was even on all sides. That heart layer is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and then that teal layer in the background is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And this entire card layer will be going on an A2 size card base, and it's going to be just a white card base. It will be a pre-made card base that I purchased off Amazon, because I like to use the pre-made card bases as much as I can. So I did get a pack of that on Amazon, and if you're interested, I'll link that below as well. And I do add some twine and just put a glue dot underneath that bow just to secure it in place. And in case you're wondering, an A2 size card base is measured 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So that's what most of my cards are. There are a few exceptions in this video. I do make some smaller cards, and you'll see that coming up. So I do add some pink gems to the front of this card, and just to give it some sparkle, trying to figure out where I want to put them, and then that will complete this card. So moving on to my next card, I have a piece of the heart pattern paper that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So I'm just going to add some glue to the back of that and adhere that to a piece of the cranberry cardstock. Now that cardstock is from my stash. It's from the Stamps of Life, and that cranberry cardstock I thought matched perfectly with this collection. And the cranberry cardstock is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and here I'm just laying out different pieces. I have that strip paper that it's the strip of the black and white stripes, and that is 5/8 inches tall by 4 1/8 inch wide. And then I'm going to bring in some of the different ephemera pieces. I also will be bringing in a red doily, and that is a heart-shaped doily that I picked up, I think, last year at the Target dollar stop. So that's just something that I had in my stash. Now, if you don't have a heart doily, and maybe you have a heart die that you can die cut out, you can use that in place of the doily. Or if you have just maybe a circle die, some type of, layering die that you might want to use underneath here, just so you can layer those ephemera pieces there, you can use any type of layering die here. If you had a square or an oval, I'm sure any of that would look good. But these I had a pack of doilies. I don't remember how many were in the pack, but it was only $1. It was a really good price, and I couldn't pass that up. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Target has in their dollar stop this Valentine's Day. So here you can see I'm using the Love You. I'm using the little piece that almost looks like a ticket, and then the I don't know if they're boxers, the little short pair of heart shorts. I thought those would be cute for this card. And then I'm going to also bring in the True Love sentiment and add that there towards the bottom. The colors in that match some of the colors in that those ephemera pieces, so I thought that looked really good together. So I'm going to go ahead and add glue to the back of this layer and put it on an A2 size card base, and again it's just a white card base from my stash, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I'm going to be bringing in 2 stitched oval dies. Again, these dies are also from the Stamps of Life. The larger stitched oval die was cut out of some hot pink paper that I had in my stash, and I'm going to layer up the heart pattern paper on top of that, and this little XOXO ephemera piece will layer nicely right on top of that. And then I have this candy paper that measures 4 by 5 1/4, and I also have a piece of vanilla cardstock. The vanilla cardstock is almost like a cream cardstock, and it's also from the Stamps of Life. And I chose to use the vanilla cardstock because I noticed that a lot of the white portion of the paper, the pattern paper that's in this collection, it's not a true white, it's more of an off-white, so the vanilla cardstock seemed to work well. And I did add a ribbon just as a layering piece underneath that oval, and then that piece of that card layer is going to go on the vanilla layer, which measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and then that entire layer is going to end up going on a hot pink. It's the same pink paper that the oval was cut out of, and that cardstock layer is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Actually, that hot pink paper is the guava cardstock from the Stamps of Life. And then I go ahead and add some of these chocolate puffy stickers. I was trying to decide where I want them to go on this oval. I thought that these puffy stickers matched perfectly with this pattern paper, so I wanted to use them. I did add a ribbon there to the front, adding some hot glue to the ribbon, and then I'm going to put this on an A2 size card base, again just a white card base. And that completes this card. For my next card, I am going to be bringing in a red doily, and this was just one I had in my stash. I believe this one is from Michael's, from the Recollections from a few years back when they had their Valentine stuff. Could have been from their Christmas stuff, I'm not sure, but I know it was Recollections. So I add that here. If you don't have a doily, you can take a circle die and do the same thing. And then I add some of these ephemera pieces. I'm going to use the Will You Be Mine little notebook piece of paper. And then I'm going to also use the Hey Hot stuff with the hot sauce. I thought that would be cute. You can say, hey hot stuff, will you be mine? I just thought that was really cute. And then I do add some heart puffy stickers from the puffy sticker pack. And then I add that to an A2 size card base. So the striped layer, that is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and then that cranberry layer is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 onto an A2 size card base. For my next card, I'm going to be using an A2 size card base in the vanilla. Again, that's from the Stamps of Life cardstock papers. And the card base is A2 in size. Again, that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So in order to get your card base, you're going to take an 8 1/2 by 11 sheet of cardstock, cut it to 8 1/2 by 5 1/2, and score it at 4 1/4 inches. And then I have some other layers there. So the red pattern paper, it's 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and then I have that black and cream color striped paper, which is 3 7/8 by 2 3/4 wide. So, and then I'm just going to layer on some of these ephemera pieces. And I'm using that typewriter, You Are Just My Type, as well as the mail with the hearts coming out of it, and the mailbox. So just gluing them onto that large layer that came in the ephemera pack, and then adding that there to the front of the card. I do bring in some heart puffy stickers, and I'll be adding 3 of those, and that entire layer is going on the A2 size card base, and that completes this card. For my next card, I'm going to be bringing in the mini envelope die from the Stamps of Life, and I die cut that out of just some pink cardstock that I had in my stash, and I'm just folding it at the score lines, and then I will add glue to hold this envelope together. I love using this envelope. I've used it a few times on previous cards that I've made, and I just think it's really cute, especially for Valentine's Day. So I'm also bringing in some of the dotted heart dies from the Stamps of Life, and I die cut a large dotted heart just as the background layering piece, and then I'm going to add the envelope right to the top of that, and that pattern paper that it's on is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I do add some of the ephemera pieces, and then I add the I love you, and then I'm going to add that to an A2 size card base, and this time the actual card base is in the pink color. So that is an A2 size card base in pink, and it matches that envelope. And that completes that card. For my next card, I have that red strip of pattern paper, which is 5 1/4 by 2 1/4, and I'm going to attach that to that red flower paper. And that flower paper measures 4 by 5 1/4. So I'm just going to trim there off the excess just to make sure that it's even. And then I'm going to bring in some of these ephemera pieces. I'm going to use the circle. That's a nice layering piece for this card. And then I'm going to bring in the sunglasses and then the sentiment that says you're spectacular, because those obviously go together. So we'll add that to the card layer, and then that entire card layer will go on a piece of my cranberry cardstock from the Stamps of Life, and the cranberry cardstock measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then that entire layer will go on an A2 size card base. I will finish this card off by adding some red gems to the front of that card, and then I will add a red ribbon to the top, so I'll just tie that in a bow, and then I will add a glue dot right underneath the center of that bow just to hold it in place, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I'm going to be using some scalloped rectangle dies from the Stamps of Life. So I have a larger one and a smaller one to layer right on top of each other. I'm using the cloud pattern paper, and then that red layer is just a cranberry cardstock from the Stamps of Life, adding that on to an A2 size card base in white, and then I'm bringing in the ephemera pieces. I do bring in the globe. I thought that would look cute with the globe with the cloud paper. I do bring in a little coffee cup of ephemera, and then the sentiment says you're my whole world, so those go together. I thought that was really cute. And then I just add the words so loved, and I stick that there underneath the coffee. So I think these pieces go really well together, and then I do add a couple of red gems to the front of the card, and then pull in the puffy sticker sunglasses and add those to the globe, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I have this striped paper, and that stripe, that little strip there, it's 5/8 inches by 4 1/8 inches, and I'm going to attach this ice cream with the banner directly to that strip. I am bringing in another one of the heart doilies, and then that sprinkles pattern paper is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So I do add that there. Again, if you don't have a heart doily, you can add, if you had a heart die or even a circle die, you can do the same thing. So here's just trying to add some glue and then just kind of rubbing it in so it doesn't seep out of the holes. So I'll add that to my card layer, and it is extending beyond that card layer, and I'm just going to trim it off. So next I'm going to add this layering piece, and just add that there with glue right on top of the heart, and then the ice cream is going to go right in the center of that layering piece, and you can see that that striped strip of pattern paper is extending beyond the edge, so you can just trim that off the side. And then I add that entire layer to a piece of teal cardstock from my stash that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then I bring in some of these heart ephemera pieces and just add them there to that card layer, and then that entire layer is going to go on an A2 size card base in white, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I'm going to be bringing in some stitched rectangle dies from the Stamps of Life, and I cut them out of the pattern paper that you see here. Now, if you don't have a stitched rectangle die set, you can just cut your stitched rectangles. I have measurements in my blog. The larger one is 4 by 5 1/4, and then the smaller, the red heart paper, is 3 1/4 by 4 1/2. So you can just cut your squares using your paper trimmer, or your rectangles using your paper trimmer, and it will do the same thing. You just won't have the stitching on the sides. So I am going to take some twine and I'm going to wrap it around towards the bottom of this layer. So after I attached the rectangles together, so just tie that twine in a bow, and then I'm going to use the banner piece that you see here, Love is All You Need, and I'm just going to move that bow over just a little bit because I want to make sure that it's going to be exactly to the right of that banner once I adhere it. I added some double-sided adhesive foam strips to the back of the banner, but I did leave a space where the twine is going to be. And I did add the adhesive foam because if you were to just add glue to the back of that, it wouldn't lie flat because there is twine there. So that's why I added that and just leave a space so that the twine can sit nicely underneath it. I do add these little birds with the heart. I thought that would be cute sitting there on the twine. And then I am going to just tape down this twine just so that it stays, and then just add some glue to the back of this entire layer. That is going to go on a cranberry piece of cardstock. It measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then that entire layer will go on a white card base, which is A2 in size. I'm going to add some red gems to the front, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I am going to be using some scalloped rectangle dies, and if you don't have scalloped rectangle dies, you can simply cut your rectangles. The larger one is 4 by 5 3/8, and the smaller one is 3 by 4 1/4. And I am using some of the ephemera pieces. I thought that this little bear would be super cute. I ended up cutting off the sentiment that was attached to his feet and using this particular sentiment instead. It says, "I love you this much," with the arrows. I thought that would be so cute, and it fits perfectly inside of these rectangles. So this is a pretty simple card. I'm adding that layer onto a piece of cantaloupe cardstock from the Stamps of Life that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then that entire layer will go on an A2 size card base in white. I do add some epoxy dots to the front of that, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I am going to be using this chocolate candy paper, and I cut that to 3 by 4 5/8, and that's going to layer on top of this hot pink cardstock that measures 3 1/8 by 4 3/4. And then I have this teal flower paper. It's 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and that will layer on a piece of just some teal cardstock from my stash, and that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then those layers will layer onto each other. So I'll layer the pink layer onto the teal layer just right in the middle so that it is even. And then I'm going to bring in some ephemera pieces. So I'm just going to layer some of these pieces up. I am going to be using the sentiment Yours Sweet, and I'm going to be bringing in the strawberry because that matches with this whole theme, the chocolate covered strawberry. And then that entire layer is going to go on an A2 size card base in white. And then I will add some pink, they're hot pink little gems to the front of that card, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I am going to be using another stitched rectangle die, this time just cutting it out of one layer, which is that plaid pattern paper. And that stitched rectangle die, it measures 2 3/4 by 4, so if you don't have a stitched rectangle, you can just cut that out on your paper trimmer. And that's going to layer on top of this mint or teal paper that measures 2 7/8 by 4 1/8. Just to add another layer of interest, I'm bringing in a white doily from my stash, and then just adding that smaller rectangle layer to the white doily, and then that's going to go on top of that pattern paper. Now, that red pattern paper that you see there, that's 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And then I'm going to flip that layer over and then just trim off the rest of that doily. I add the peanut butter and jelly sentiment to that, and then I add that entire layer onto a teal layer, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I noticed that the glue was showing through the doily, so I decided to cover up that glue by just adding a ribbon to the bottom, and I think that did the trick. So just add a ribbon to the bottom there and then add glue and put this on a card base. It is an A2 size card base, and then just tie a bow and then add some hot glue to the bow and add it there. And then I just finish off by adding some epoxy dots, and that will complete this card. For this card, I'm bringing in some dotted heart dies from the Stamps of Life, and I die cut some dotted hearts out of some solid cardstock as well as some patterned paper. I'm also using a smaller card base, which measures 7 inches across. So when you have it open instead of folded, it's 7 inches across by 4 7/8 down, and then you score it at 3 1/2, and that will make a card base that measures 3 1/2 by 4 7/8. And this is actually a pre-made card base that I had in my stash. I had a bunch of them that I picked up several years ago at Michael's, and I said, let me just use these, and they would be perfect for some small Valentine's Day cards. So that's what I'm using. So I'll be doing that for the next several cards, just putting them on a smaller card base. And again, it's 3 1/2 by 4 7/8 inches. So that red layer with the hearts, that measures 3 7/8 by 4 3/4. And then I cut some mini banner dies out of some pink and some white cardstock, and those banner dies are the sampler dies from the Stamps of Life. And you can just cut and do a fishtail banner if you don't have dies that will do the banner for you. And then I just layer the heart right over top of those, and then I add this koala bear, and it says the sentiment, koala me crazy but I love you. And then I use one of the puffy stickers, which is the lock and key, and add that to his hand. I thought that was so cute. So that completes this card, and then I completed 2 more cards very similar to this. So you see I have dotted hearts again here, but it's just on the opposite side of the card, and I used the record that has the sentiment #1 hit in my heart, and then I used the sentiment forever and added that to the middle of the heart and added some epoxy dots. And then I created one more card very similar to this using 3 dotted heart dies, added the sewing machine with the sentiment so much love, added that to the middle of the heart. Notice that I also put the hearts off of that cardstock layer and then just trimmed off the excess so the hearts are off of the page, and added a few banners underneath the heart and some epoxy dots, and that completes that card. For my next set of cards, I am using a smaller card base, just as I did before. So that card base again is 3 1/2 by 4 7/8. I did use a stitched rectangle die to cut out the sprinkles paper, and that measured 2 3/4 by 4. So if you don't have a stitched rectangle die, you can just trim that with your paper trimmer. And then that red heart paper, it measures 1 by 2 3/4, and I just wanted to add a strip there so that that Pop-Tart is grounded on the card. And then that cranberry layer is 3 3/8 by 4 3/4, and I just added that to the card base and added some heart stickers that were in my stash. And then I created a few more cards similar to this. So the next card is No One Stacks Up to You. The pink strip of paper that's grounding those pancakes is a little bit shorter than the previous card because I was just going with the scraps that I had. I wanted to use up some scraps, so they're not all necessarily the same width. And then the next card is using the ephemera piece, We've Got Chemistry. And then the final card in this set is Love You S'more, only I put it in a landscape position rather than vertical. And that rectangle piece was propped up on some foam tape to add some dimension because I did add some twine instead of grounding it with a piece of cardstock. And after looking at this card, I realized that I put that rectangle piece on too far to the left, but I couldn't take it up, so that's okay. For my next card, I have a piece of cloud pattern paper that measures 3 by 5 1/4. I'm adding that on to the top of that cranberry cardstock, which measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And then I have a piece of the teal solid color cardstock from my stash that I used a wave die and cut that out. And I'm going to add some ink to the top of this. This is the sea glass ink from the Stamps of Life, just for some added dimension. And that wave die is from the whale die set from the Stamps of Life. And then I just add that to the bottom of that cardstock layer. And that mint piece, when it's measured tall, it actually measures 1 3/4 by 5 1/4 wide. So it's 1 3/4 inch tall. So I wanted to just make like a little ocean scene so that the whale is swimming in the ocean and he has the clouds in the background and then the ocean underneath. And so I add that to the card layer, and then I decide to bring in the little small miniature whale puffy sticker and add that there as well. Add that to an A2 size card base, and this card base is in the vanilla cardstock. It's the cream cardstock from the Stamps of Life, and add some epoxy dots, and that completes that card. For my next card, that cloud piece of pattern paper is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and then I have this strip of pattern paper, which it needs to measure 2 by 4. Mine wasn't quite 4 inches across. I was just using a scrap that I had in my stash, but it worked. And I'm going to use this tag that says "Love You a Whole Sloth" and add that there to the top of that layer. And then I did cut 2 small banners, one out of some pattern paper and one out of some pink cardstock, using the sampler dies from the Stamps of Life. And if you don't have banner dies to use, you can just cut a fishtail on some cardstock and it would do the same thing. I take that entire card layer and I add it to a card base. Now this time my card base actually is a pink card base. So the whole thing is a pink card base, and it is an A2 in size card base. I add a glue dot to the middle of that tag and add a pink and white piece of twine that I tied in a bow, and then I use some hot glue to add a pink gem to the front of that card. And that completes this card. For my next card, I wanted to add a photo frame to the front of the card. So I have a piece of pink cardstock that measures 3 by 3 1/4, and then that red heart paper measures 2 1/4 by 2 3/4. And then I'm going to take a piece of this teal scrap piece of pattern paper, and I just took a border die cut a little hillside border out of that paper, and I'm just going to add that to the bottom of the heart paper. So that's going to be kind of like a hill or a grass on the bottom of this layer. And then I'm just going to trim off the excess. So the teal paper is actually cut to the same width as the red paper. It's 2 3/4 inch wide, and then you just trim off the excess, and then that's going to go at the top of the pink cardstock. So it's going to look almost like one of those Polaroid pictures, and I'm going to add the word love with the puffy stickers at the very bottom, and then I'll add that square to the top of the cardstock layer. And then I'm going to finish creating this cute little scene with the puffy stickers. So I add the mailbox and the bear, and then I'm going to go ahead and finish putting this card together. So I have that heart pattern paper on the cranberry layer. That cranberry layer is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and the teal heart paper is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I do add a heart doily to the top of that, and then that strip of paper is 3/4 inches tall by 4 1/8 inch wide. So again, all these measurements, they will be in my blog, so you don't have to worry about taking notes. And then I will go ahead and add that Polaroid frame to the front of the heart, and then add that to a white card base. And again, this card is A2 in size, and that completes this card. For my next card, these smaller rectangles, the polka dot paper is measured 2 3/4 by 4. That's going to layer onto a cranberry rectangle, which is 2 7/8 by 4 1/8. And then the larger rectangles, the heart paper is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and that's layered onto a piece of cranberry cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm using the love from the ephemera pieces, and I'm going to layer that onto a piece of cranberry cardstock, and then I'm just going to trim off the edges. And then I'll add the small rectangle layer to the top of the large layer, and then add the word love. I am going to add just an extra piece of cardstock underneath that because it is going off of the first piece of cardstock layer, so I want it to lay flat on the card layer, so adding that extra piece of cardstock definitely helps. I do bring in some puffy stickers from the puffy sticker set, the Coca-Cola, the Bubblegum machine, and the ice cream. And then I take some twine and add that around the top. This is added to an A2 size white card base. and then after it's added to the white card base, the twine will be added and tied in a bow. And I'll secure that bow with a glue dot, and that will complete this card. For this next card, I am using a stitched rectangle die to cut a piece of solid white cardstock that measures 3.5 by 4 3/4. If you don't have a stitched rectangle die, that will be added onto the peach polka dot paper that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, which is then added to a white A2 size card base. I am bringing in the ephemera pieces, so I'm using the What a Cutie sentiment and then adding the orange there on top, adding the banner. I'm going to bring in some epoxy dots that match the colors in the pattern paper, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I have the cloud pattern paper that I cut down to 2 by 2, and then a layering piece of cranberry that measures 2 1/8 by 2 1/8. I am bringing in a scalloped border die from the Stamps of Life. That was from one of their card kits, so at the time of filming, it's not for sale on their website. But if you don't have a scalloped rectangle die, you can always just, use just a scrap sheet of paper and just cut that in just a regular solid straight edged rectangle. So I thought it would be cute to make a cute little scene on this square. So I add the Koala puffy sticker and then the speech bubble that says love you. And then I'm adding some foam because I will need to add that to this card layer. Notice that I'm leaving a gap where that border is because it will not lay flat. That's why I'm adding the foam, because it won't lay flat if you just add glue. So I had to leave a space there with the foam tape. And then just adding that to an A2 size card base. And again, all these measurements will be in my blog. I do add a piece of twine around the top, and I will tie it in a bow and then adhere it with a glue dot just to secure it. I do add some epoxy dots towards the bottom, just some red, 3 epoxy dots at the bottom right hand corner, and that will complete this card. For this next card, I have the heart paper that measures 3 1/4 by 4. That's going to be at the top of that pink card layer. That pink card layer measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I have the flower teal paper that measures 2 by 4, and that's at the bottom. I did use a ribbon die and cut that out of the same color cardstock as that pink layering piece. That die was from the Stamps of Life, and then just added it there to connect those pieces of pattern paper. And then I'm using the ephemera You're My Cup of Tea. I did put some foam adhesive on the back of that, and I'm just adding that to the card. I was going to add a puffy sticker, the flowers, but then I decided I didn't want it, so I did take it off. I do come in with some hot pink little gems, and I decide I want to add those to the bottom of that teacup just to add some bling to this card. And that will complete this card. However, I do complete 2 other cards very similar to this. So here's another card I created with a similar layout. Instead of using the ribbon border die, I just put a piece of scrap paper to cover those, where the line that connects those pattern papers. And I'm using the ephemera I Only Have Fries for You. And then for my next card, I am using a smaller card base, 3 1/2 by 4 7/8. And I still use the same concept with the pattern paper on the top and bottom, and then the strip that connects those pattern papers. I'm using the ephemera piece Let's Get Lost Together and added some hot pink little gems underneath that sentiment. For my next card, I have a piece of flowered paper, and that is cut to 1 7/8 by 5 3/8, and that is layered onto that polka dotted paper that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I do have a stitched circle that I cut out of some cranberry cardstock. I layered on the ephemera with the bird that says love you. I do add another layer of the ephemera underneath that, and then add the love is in the air underneath the circle. And then that will be layered onto a piece of cranberry cardstock that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and that's put on a white A2 size card base. I do add some red gems to the front of that card, and that will complete this card. So as we progress into these last few cards, I'm trying to get rid of some of these scraps. So you see I have all these little short scraps of paper that I'm using, and these are just scraps that I've cut down from previous cards that I've made. So all these dimensions will be in my blog. So if you're interested in that, you can again go take a look at that. I do have a stitched circle die, which I cut out of some teal paper, and then I'm using the Talk About Amazing and putting that on the front of that stitched circle. That's a 2 1/4 inch stitched circle. And then just adding some of the puffy stickers and the ephemera pieces there with the hearts with the wings, and adding that onto a cranberry card layer that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and then that's going onto a white A2 size card base, and that completes this card. So here again with this card, I'm trying to get rid of some scraps. So a lot of these pattern papers are just from scraps that I've had laying around. So I have a solid piece of teal cardstock that's going onto a piece of cranberry cardstock. So the cranberry is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. The teal is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And then I have the striped paper and then the strip of heart paper going on the top of that. I do have another stitched circle that I cut out. That stitched circle is 2 3/4 inch circle. I am using the Chinese food on top of that circle, and I'm using some sentiments there in the right hand corner. So I have the Be Mine Forever and Ever. I do go into my puffy stickers, and I decide to pull out these puffy stickers that match this ephemera piece and just pop them on there for added dimension, and then add this to an A2 size card base, and that completes this card. So for this card, the sprinkles paper measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and that is going on to the cranberry 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I have this heart scrap, which I'm going to add here to the bottom. That strip is 4 1/8 by about 1 3/4 inches. And then I have the scalloped die from the Stamps of Life that I'm just going to add to the top and bottom of that strip. And if you don't have a scallop die, you can just use regular cardstock here if you wanted to. I am going to bring in the tag, Love You a Waffle a Lot. Add that there. I'm going to also bring in this ephemera piece of the waffle, but cut the sentiment off, and then bring in the waffle puffy sticker. So I'll have at least 3 waffles on this card. I do add a ribbon to the top of the tag and secure that with a glue dot, and add that entire layer to an A2 size card base, and it's just a white card base. And that will complete this card. For this next card, I thought that the black and the hot pink would look really nice together. So I'm going to be using the polka dot paper, which is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and it's going to be layered onto a hot pink A2 size card layer or card base. And I use the scallop die, the scallop border die, and die cut 2 of those out of the pink, and I'm just putting those on to this pattern paper and adding some of the sentiments, Adore, XOXO, and then I'll be adding another ephemera piece at the bottom right that says I Choose You. So I thought that the pink and the black would look really cute together. And then I'll finish up this card by just adding some hot pink gems to the front of this card, and that will complete this card. And for my last 3 cards, I had so many scraps left over, so I'm using the stitched window background die from the Stamps of Life, and I'm taking the grid die that you see here and just putting some of the scrap paper underneath it, just securing it there with some washi tape before I run that through my die cut machine. Just taking various strips of pattern paper to cut these little squares out of this die, and this is a really fun die to use to make a fun background for your card, especially when you're trying to get rid of scraps. So I do make 3 cards with this in various colors, and once I die cut that piece, then I'll just take all those squares out and just put them in some type of order of how I want them on my card. And then I'm going to take both of the dies, the large rectangle as well as the grid die, layer those up, and then die cut some cranberry cardstock to cut out this border. And the border is going to be adhered to a vanilla card base. It's A2 in size. And then I'll just piece all of these squares into the grid. Next, I'm going to add one of the ephemera pieces, Perfect Match, and I'm also going to add the February 14th tag up at the top left-hand corner, add a glue dot to the hole, and then a piece of twine tied in a bow. And that is my completed card. And I also made two more cards, one with a pink border and the sentiment, "You have a pizza, my heart," with some heart stickers. Those were from my stash. And then my last card, I used the cantaloupe cardstock from the Stamps of Life as my border. And the sentiment is one of the ephemera pieces, "We are a perfect match." I also added some puffy stickers there, the February 14th heart puffy sticker, and then the match sticks as well. And then this is my leftover ephemera pieces and my puffy stickers. There's not much left, but I didn't have very much paper left, just a bunch of little scraps, so I figured I would stop with 37 cards. So once again, here are all the cards that I created with this collection. And if you're interested in this collection, please see the description box below for the links to these products. And let me know down in the comments which card was your favorite and what you thought of this collection. And be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more card making tutorials from me, and also follow my other social media. I am on Facebook as Lisa Mears Card Designs, as well as Instagram and Pinterest. So once again, thanks so much for watching and have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.